My name is Dr. Ayode Alakija, Dr. Yodi to most people, and I am your convener. I'm the Humanitarian Development Peace Nexus Coordinator, as they're calling me this week, and the head of the ECC. Together with the Ministry of, under the auspices of the Ministry of Budget and National Planning, we are convening this week-long national conversation on the Humanitarian Development Peace Nexus. We've already had some very, very rich discussions. As I said earlier, today is day 5, so you can imagine the past 4 days have been full. It was envisioned as a main conference on the 6th and the 7th, and maybe a couple of side events, a couple of gallery walk-ins on the first 3 days. What it really has turned into is a 5-day full conference. This room has been this full every day of the week. Yesterday, we went into the high-level panel, the first high-level panel, where we had the Honorable Minister of State, we had members of the House of Assembly, we had representatives, governors, representatives from Borno State, Adamawa State. We had various distinguished personalities and 8 ambassadors in the room who all gave statements. It was a really, really rewarding day. Yesterday morning was capped off by the announcement by the US government of $102 million in additional assistance and funding to the northeast of Nigeria. Thank you, America. I think it deserves a whole lot more than that. We have said this year that funding was going to be a major constraint and going to be a major challenge. I know that that announcement has gone some way towards relieving some of the headaches of some of the heads of agencies. I see Mirta from IOM sitting there because the first thing he said was shelter in his press conference. So for sure, the funding, let me explain, goes directly, works through USAID, OFDA, and Food for Peace, that's the third one, the US agencies, and it goes to our international partners to enable them to begin to carry on their work in conjunction with locals on the ground. The money is not coming to the Nigerian government, or the ECC for that matter. Let's just clarify that fact. So we've already had a really exciting time. We heard from the various heads of agencies yesterday. I see Mr. Steve Haken here this morning. We heard from various heads of agencies yesterday, Steve Haken, DFID, the EU, and also Mirta Cowlard represented the United Nations system as they spoke about what is being done with external perspectives. We heard from internal perspectives, another really exciting panel moderated by Dr. Joe Abba, where they talked about from the southeast to the Niger Delta to the northeast. Secretary to the government, Adamawa, provided a wonderful, wonderful vision for the future for those northeastern states, and indeed most of the northern states, which somebody has agreed to sit with him and look at how we can make that a reality. So in that moment, this fully became a national conversation at the high-level session. We went from north to south, from southwest to southeast. And so here we come to today. Now I would like to welcome Major General Shafa, who is here with us this morning. Welcome, sir. I'd like to welcome first, the representative of the Chief of Defense Staff, Commodore Pinder, who was here also with us yesterday. Sir. Welcome. We are absolutely delighted that you're able to join us. We are going to have again, as I said, what I think is going to be one of the highlights. We talk about the humanitarian development peace nexus. What does that mean? I think we've all got to learn what humanitarian means. We know what development is, but how does peace and security underscore, how does it really hold it all together? Without peace, the way I describe it is that without peace, we're all really wasting our time, because we can build as many schools as we want, we can rebuild as many communities as we want, as long as there is continued violence, as long as there's continued conflict and clashes, then we are most certainly not going to achieve any form of resolution. We might continue to provide humanitarian assistance in the form of food aid, but ultimately that purse and that basket of money will run dry. So the key to all of this, the key to really not spending all of this, the money that is being spent at the moment, is ensuring peace. And to that end, we have a panel that is going to start shortly that will really delve into first communities, and I'm very happy to welcome community heads from Madagali, community heads from Borno State, several young people, activists, to the room today and to the conference, who are going to give us really a viewpoint directly from the community. So we have taken the high-level political platform yesterday, which has helped us create traction and momentum around the HDPN. It has become evident that we need a platform for regular dialogue. So yesterday we suggested a save the date in about 6 months to reconvene and evaluate what we have done as a result of this conversation, and perhaps merge that into the Nigeria launch of a 3-year strategic plan. In addition, we have heard that we've actually already, this week has provided a launch for an operationalization. I can't speak. I'll say that again. Operationalization of the Nexus. Why do I say that? Borno State Commissioner for Health excitedly called me the other day to say that he has already convened a meeting of his development and humanitarian assistance people at state level. So already the Nexus in Nigeria is operationalized. I welcome the first panel. Have a great day. Thank you for being here. We seem to be missing John from NERI, who is supposed to be moderating this panel. John? Oh, no? Who's moderating? Who's moderating? Oh, Fernando. Oh, yours is fast. Okay, it's been switched around. Okay. You guys. Welcome. Fernando Medina is with the IOM. If you would like to sit up there and moderate your panel, take it away.
Thank you very much. Excellencies, dear guests and partners, IOM is honored and thanks the chance given to us by the Emergency Coordination Center and the Ministry of Budget and Planning to introduce this panel discussion, which brings to the audience the opportunity to explore the Nigerian government initiatives, programs, and experiences contributing to the humanitarian development and peace nexus, focusing specifically on the perspective of strengthening peace and security. During these last 4 days, we had the occasion to witness how the humanitarian interventions, when needed, have to link strategically and from the beginning in paving the way to gradually establish the conditions for a smooth transition to development. When societies face suffering and displacement due to man-made disasters, the efforts have to be done for building the conditions to provide opportunities for the affected populations to rebuild their hopes, their destiny, and their future. These opportunities rely on conducive environment where basic services, infrastructures, education, health, food, and livelihood are available and sustainable. Once this conducive environment is in place, a framework for durable solutions for displaced population can be considered, at least in theory, materially possible. But before all, we can't ignore an assumption. None of those mentioned material conducive conditions will allow a smooth and sustainable transition from the humanitarian scenario to a developing one if peace and security are not in place. In northeast Nigeria, violent extremism is a special driver of risk and insecurity. The Nigerian government, with its response, is doing a strong effort to restore peace and security, and this is being done not only by military means, but also with providing off-ramping alternatives and implementing rehabilitation programs for individuals who were under influence of violent extremist ideologies, but who didn't commit heinous crimes deemed to be prosecuted and subject to the criminal justice mechanism. These efforts are comprehensive of an overall strategic framework being implemented by the government of Nigeria and supported with the technical expertise of IOM, with progressive contributions from the international and donors community, including UN agencies, named DDRR, demobilization, disassociation, reintegration, and reconciliation. This strategic framework follows different aspects covering the identification, categorization, and referral of individuals under influence of violent extremism ideologies in order to transfer their either to the criminal justice mechanism or rehabilitation programs with the objective of promoting their successful return and reintegrations in their communities of origin. This process concerns both military, security, and civilian authorities, as well as communities themselves, international organizations, civil society, and private sector, through the implementation of reconciliation and reintegration mechanisms. Today, we have here with us the representative of three main different government agencies who will present us the different initiatives for promoting rehabilitation and reintegration of low-risk individuals influenced by violent extremist ideologies, as well as the community awareness aspects and reconciliation efforts ongoing, with the contribution of all these initiatives to strengthen these peace and security preconditions to make sustainable a conducive environment for the transition from a humanitarian assistance to a smooth development scenario. So I have the honor to introduce you and to invite you, first of all, Major General Bamidele Shafa, representing the Chief of Defense Staff Office, who is going to present us the Operation Safe Corridor, the radicalization, rehabilitation, and reintegration program for Boko Haram defectors in Gombe. Please, you are invited to join us. Also representing the Chief of Defense Staff Office and also to talk about more aspects related to Operation Safe Corridor, I want to invite also Mr. Charles Bolade Abodunde, Legal Advisor for Operation Safe Corridor. Thank you very much. I want also to invite Mr. Musa Chantu, Director of Orientation and Behavior Modification of National Orientation Agency, who will introduce us the community work that this agency is doing at the community level in promoting awareness, acceptance, and reconciliation for facilitating return, family reunification, and reintegration of individuals who are following these rehabilitation programs. Mr. Musa. And finally, I want also to invite Mr. Yahaya Dankoli, representing the Office of the Borno Government State Ministry of Women and Social Welfare, his permanent secretary in coordination of the rehabilitation program for women and children in Maiduguri Rehabilitation Center. Thank you very much. So without more preamble, and thanking all our panelists for their availability and attendance, and all of you also for being here present for this interesting discussion, we will invite Major General Shafa to describe the first initiative that is being implemented already by the government of Nigeria in Operation Safe Corridor. Thank you very much.
Let me acknowledge the convener of this gathering on behalf of the Chief of Defense Staff, General Abayomi Gabriel Olonishaki, who is the chairman of Operation Safe Corridor. It's a great pleasure to be here this morning, and also an opportunity to tell this gathering what the Nigerian government is doing to de-radicalize, rehabilitate, and prepare the ex-combatants for reintegration back into the larger society. Operation Safe Corridor is federal government initiative, and specifically the Commander-in-Chief, President Muhammadu Buhari, during the National Security Council meeting of September 2015, thought it wise that there needs to be a program that will encourage willing, repentant Boko Haram to surrender, embrace peace, and get them prepared to be inserted back into the larger society. And at that forum, we established Operation Safe Corridor with the Chief of Defense Staff as the chairman. You have the governors of Adamawa, Borno, and Yobe, the Chief of Army Staff, the Chief of Air Staff, the Inspector General of the Police, the Director General, Department of State Services, Director General, National Emergency Management Agency, the Chief of Defense Intelligence, and a director from the Office of National Security Advisor at the National Committee for Operation Safe Corridor. The mandate of the committee was to work out modality that will ensure smooth surrendering, de-radicalization, rehabilitation, and reintegration of ex-combatants. The Chief of Defense Staff, to operationalize that mandate, established a committee which I headed to work out modalities, and we submitted our report, and in his wisdom, he tasked the committee to implement the recommendation. And in implementing the recommendation, we look at what nature will Operation Safe Corridor take, looking at the prevailing circumstances and the objective that we want to achieve. Then we felt that it has to be humanitarian in nature, and we had to expand the composition. We brought in the Federal Ministry of Women Affairs and Social Development. We brought in the National Orientation Agency. We brought in the National Directorate of Employment. We brought in the Nigeria Prison Services. And then we brought in the Nigeria Immigration Service. So when we formed all this together, we had 14 agencies of the federal government of Nigeria and their counterparts at the state level that form Operation Safe Corridor. So what we did further was to divide this grouping into two functional groups, the security functional group, and then the de-radicalization and rehabilitation functional group. The security functional group is being led by the Armed Forces of Nigeria. We have the police, we have the civil defense, we have the SSS that form that team. The primary purpose of that team is to create enabling environment for Operation Safe Corridor to take place. That is essentially the responsibility for this aspect. So it's an opportunity to correct the impression that it is the Armed Forces of Nigeria that is running Operation Safe Corridor. That is not completely correct. The role of Nigerian Armed Forces in Operation Safe Corridor is to create the enablement for the program to take place, and to also give the strategic direction, because the Chief of Defense Staff is the chairman of Operation Safe Corridor at the national level. Now, the other functional group, which is the de-radicalization, is being led by the Nigerian prisons. The reason is that the Nigerian prison has the best trained experts, at least in West Africa as of today. They are trained by European Union, and we felt that with this expertise, we need to tap on that resource. So the Nigerian prisons deployed 51 de-radicalization experts for Operation Safe Corridor. Then we also see the need for us to do sensitization, for us to do counseling, and that was what brought the National Orientation Agency. As of today, National Orientation Agency has about 25 staff in Operation Safe Corridor. We have some of the ex-combatants who are non-Nigerians, and they will need to be processed at the end of the program. That was what informed the incorporation of the Immigration Service into Operation Safe Corridor. NEMA is essentially to provide the relief materials needed to sustain the camp, and they've been doing that. The National Directorate of Employment, they are to provide the vocationists that will handle the skill acquisition training for the ex-combatants. Now, what do we do? What does Operation Safe Corridor do with the ex-combatants? The combatants do not surrender to Operation Safe Corridor. They surrender to Operation Lafia Dole that does the initial screening and select those who are qualified to come for Operation Safe Corridor. There are some Boko Haram elements that have been declared wanted by the government, and until they are cleared, they may not be qualified to go for Operation Safe Corridor. So Lafia Dole makes sure that those that are sent to us, they are not on the list of wanted persons. So when we take them in Operation Safe Corridor, the first thing we do is to take them through advanced profiling that involves comprehensive medical screening to determine their health status, so that those with terminal disease can be, or serious medical problems can be accorded necessary care. We are partnering with Federal Medical Center in Gombe for this. We also take the DNA sample of all ex-combatants that are brought to Operation Safe Corridor. And thereafter, we document them. We take their biometrics and capture them on national data using the National ID Card Management Commission facility. So as of today, all Boko Haram ex-combatants that have gone or going through Operation Safe Corridor are captured in Nigerian national data. Then we also took them through detailed debrief for two reasons: to be able to elicit information that will assist us in handling them in the camp, and to also, as much as possible, derive valuable information that will also aid in the conduct of the operation in the field. After the advanced profiling, then they go through the de-radicalization and the rehabilitation aspect of the program, which is 15 weeks. Now, the DRAD process, there are 7 therapies that the ex-combatants go through. They go through psycho-spiritual counseling. They go through psychosocial counseling. They go through introductory formal education. They go through various forms of recreation. And we have also introduced some other programs where we encourage family links. We make them talk to their relations. For those who have the contacts of their relations, we make them to talk to them so that they start building confidence. And we're also bringing in another program, which is camp visitation. Hopefully that should take place by July, where we're extending invitations to selected government officials at federal and state level, traditional rulers, and community leaders that will visit the ex-combatants in the camp and interact with them. The aim of this is to build confidence and to start creating avenue for acceptance of these boys, and to also allow this group of people to pass the message back to the larger society of the transformation that these boys are going through. We hope that we'll achieve the aim of this. Operation Safe Corridor is partnering with a number of organizations, local and international, NGOs and multinational. We are partnering with the Center for Development and Democracy. We are partnering with Northeast Regional Initiative, NERI. We are partnering with IOM. We are partnering with UNICEF, the USAID, the DFID, and the EU. They are also partnering with us appropriately. And so far, as of today, we have 254 surrendered Boko Haram in Operation Safe Corridor. And in another 2 weeks, we should be taking another 150. And that will make it close to about 400. Amongst this number, the 95 of them have actually gone through the program, and they have completed it. But because the reintegration aspect, which is exclusively the responsibility of the state government, is a long-term process that needs careful and deliberate planning. So what we are doing in Operation Safe Corridor is to extend the period for the vocational training of these boys to allow the state governments to get their preparation completed, after which we'll hand over the boys to them. However, Adamawa and Bauchi, that have their own arrangement completed, have taken their own indigenes, 2 from Adamawa and 1 from Bauchi. The information that is available to me is that Borno and Yobe, they are also doing everything possible to see that they also receive their own indigenes, altogether 86 of them. The question has been, how do we monitor these boys when they are integrated? The system of monitoring we are putting in place is we will use established government structure and traditional mechanism. The existing government structure is that the Nigerian prisons has the parole system. So every ex-combatant that goes through Operation Safe Corridor will submit their entire details to the Nigerian prisons so that they use their structures at the state and local government levels to monitor them. There are a few of these boys who have been diagnosed to have abused substance while in the bush. The National Directorate Drug Law Enforcement Agency, NDLEA, is also part of Operation Safe Corridor. They also will use their own structure to monitor this category of persons in their states and local government. While in the camp, the ex-combatants go through rudimentary vocational training under the tutelage of vocationists from National Directorate of Employment. The idea is that at the end of the 16 weeks in the camp, they will graduate into the NDE vocational skill acquisition centers at the states and local government. And we also use that structure to monitor them. At least where 2 or 3 are to be in a particular NDE vocational center, and 1 is consistently absent, we should be able to know what is wrong with him and where he is at the moment. Then the traditional system, the setting in northern Nigeria is such that the traditional rulers, the village heads, the community leaders, the mianguas, the district head, even up to the emirate council, is organized in such a way that there is at least a knowledge of who and who stays in a community. So our plan is that when Operation Safe Corridor hands over these people to the state government will hand them over to their respective traditional councils where they come from. And we also monitor them through that channel. Operation Safe Corridor does not reintegrate. We prepare the ex-combatants for reintegration. What we do, having gone through this program, and we have recommended to the government through the Chief of Defense Staff the need to for the government to consider granting all ex-combatants that have gone through Operation Safe Corridor successfully amnesty. This is born out of the findings from our interaction. We saw the unwillingness of people accepting the ex-combatants even after going through Operation Safe Corridor. And we felt that if they are granted amnesty, it means they have been excused of their wrongdoings, and that will also encourage the state government to commit resources for their reintegration and also engage the larger society on the need to forgive and accept these boys back. On this note, I want to believe that I have been able to inform this gathering as to what Operation Safe Corridor is all about. And then if there are questions during interaction, I will be able to answer them. And then, okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Major General Shafa, for this detailed description about the structure and the different programmatic aspects of Operation Safe Corridor. And also, I wanted also to highlight this message that you are sending also about that Operation Safe Corridor is preparing individuals for future reintegration process. So when we come back already to the states, to the field, to the areas of origin of all these individuals who are following this rehabilitation, the radicalization process, the preparation for their integration is already there, but the efforts already have to be continued at the field level when the individuals passing through Operation Safe Corridor program are going back to the community, highlighting already the efforts that are being done already at different state governors, but also a call also for reflection about the efforts that have to be done by all the partners already in the field in order to promote the best conditions to ensure that these individuals can be successfully reintegrated to prevent potential recidivism and to ensure that reconciliation and peace is going to be strengthened. So now I would like to, we see one of the programs that is already being implemented. I wanted to see now another perspective of a parallel program that is being also developed in Maiduguri. And we have Mr. Yahaya Dankoli, who is the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Women and Social Welfare, who is the most important person, the responsible for the development and implementation of another rehabilitation program that is focusing more in women and children in a center already located in Maiduguri under the auspices of the governor of Borno State. So, Mr. Yahaya.
Thank you very much. I want to personally thank the organizers of this convention for finding me worthy to participate in this program. What I would like to start with is for those of us that are from the northeastern Nigeria, especially Borno State, that has been tagged the epicenter of Boko Haram or its birthplace, there is need to critically analyze what was the reason that made Boko Haram to escalate to such a proportion. A lot of factors need to be considered. Activities of the insurgents from where it all started and to how it spread like a wildfire to the present stage that we have found ourselves. However, since the main theme of the conference is humanitarian development, peace, Nexus, I would like to shorten my discussion on that basis. Borno State, I just want to take us a little back. Borno State, before the insurgency, was and has been a center of commerce, and not only for the people of the state, but for the neighboring countries of Chad, Cameroon, and Niger Republic. Goods of all kinds in hundreds of trucks goes to these countries and beyond. Some goods goes as far as Central Africa and Gabon Republic with little or no restriction at all. But all these trade and commerce were no longer obtainable. In addition, these goods and other items from this country usually came to Nigeria, especially fish, cattle, sheep, goats, hide and skin, to mention but a few. What I'm going to talk about now is based on the practical work the Ministry of Women Affairs and Social Development is doing in Borno State, and the mechanism the Borno State government has put in place. As you are aware, the issue of security is not an easy task, and we all know the federal government is on top of the situation, as well as the state government. The main reason I think I was invited is the center that has been managed by the Borno State Ministry of Women Affairs and Social Development. In Borno State, we have a rehabilitation center for the rehabilitation of victims of insurgency, not Boko Haram. The issue is that members of Boko Haram that were captured by the Nigerian army, or those that have been rescued, or those that have escaped, or those that have surrendered, have been taken at the initial stage to administrative custody of the Nigerian army. It is at that point that the Nigerian army will now screen and authenticate those that are partisan and those that are not partisan. As Major General Shapa has pointed out, those that were found or have surrendered that are partisan or Boko Haram members will be taken to Operation Safe Corridor in Gombe. But those that have been cleared that have no direct link with the insurgency are being brought or handed over to Borno State government. And then they will be brought to our center, that is the rehabilitation center, under the Ministry of Women Affairs and Social Development. By the time they came in, a lot of activities do take place. And some of the operation that we do in the center is a comprehensive operation that was developed by UNICEF and other agencies, our developing partners. And we form what is called an operational framework that lasts from 8 weeks to 12 weeks. At the initial stage, by the time they came into the center, first and foremost, we look into their own health. We have a medical center that is a clinic within the rehabilitation center that is solely funded and operated by UNICEF. We have a resident doctor that take care of some minor ailments. Where issues are beyond the clinic, the referral are made to specialist hospital or to teaching hospital, where all medical cases have been taken care of. And some of them are even taken to Borno State, to Federal Neuropsychiatric Center, which is located also in Maiduguri. Most of these victims that usually come in are so traumatized that a lot of them have even gone insane. They have mental cases. But all these things all these people are being categorized based on their own needs, and then proper medical attention is being given to them. After medical attention, we take care of their needs like wash and nutrition. Then before we now start some of this documentation. Some of the developing partners that actually come to assist us in this, our operation, apart from UNICEF, include UNHCR, UNFPA, IOM, NERI, Victims Support Fund, and a lot of others, to mention but a few. All what they do is a comprehensive, we usually have periodic meeting that we call coordination meeting based on the needs of these people as they come. So we need to convey this meeting from time to time. And during this meeting, we discuss what needs to be done and how to go about it. So every partner will now come and say and give his own perspective or what he feels he can take on as regard to the requirement of these victims of insurgency that are in this center. And these victims of insurgency are being programmed in such a way that they will be there for a period of only minimum of 8 weeks and maximum of 12 weeks. And between this period, a lot of activities are being done by our social workers. Apart from all their own requirements in terms of health, nutrition, wash, they are being trained in skill acquisition within the center. Some of them are being exposed or are being trained to learn how to handle small handiworks like carpentry, shoe making, tailoring, beads making, soap making, and other handy skill works. These are being based on the requirement on the needs of these victims, because most of these victims are women and children. And within these children, some of them, very unfortunately, are even unaccompanied. Some are separated. All this documentation is being taking place, and at the same time, our social workers go out to the field at the end of the training to trace their own family. Family tracing is also going on as these activities are going on. So we make linkage with their own families that are in Maiduguri or outside Maiduguri. Where need arises, our social workers can even travel outside the state to go and trace the families of these victims. And these victims families are being invited to the center to actually authenticate the relationship between the victims and the family, whether the extent of the relationship. And as we go further, let's go. Once we are able to trace the victims of this family, and at the same time we are satisfied that there is a family link between the two of them, then the process of unification and reintegration is being taken place. And the community leaders are also involved in this process. It's not that if only somebody come and say this is his own relation, that we give him over to the victim. We have to make sure that we find out the actual relationship and at the same time involve some of the community leaders in this reintegration and unification of members of the family. So far, so good. From the establishment of the center to date, we have received up to 4 batches of victims of insurgency that we have successfully rehabilitated, unified, and reintegrated in the society. In April 2017, 566 victims were brought to the center and were successfully rehabilitated and unified with their family and reintegrated in the society. The second batch was also in May. 482 victims of insurgency were brought into the center and successfully unified and reintegrated. The third batch, 755 in October 2017, were brought into the center. And lately, in 2018, between January and February, 316 victims were brought into the center and successfully unified and reintegrated in the society. And the good story about all this issue is that we have not had a single issue where there is a complete rejection from the society that this member is not accepted or is being totally rejected. And that gives us a lot of hope on the work that we are doing, and at the same time that people are satisfied that they can accept those that are being unified with their own family without much problem. The major issue that we honestly encounter it has to do with children that are unaccompanied or separated. In trying to find a foster parent for them or to find a care for them. But a lot of issues, a lot of modalities have been put in place, whereas foster parents have been identified and are being counseled to actually accept these parents so that at least they cannot continue to stay in this center. As much as possible, we try to link them up with this foster parent who, for one reason or the other, try to accept these children that are highly unaccompanied. Because you may find out that a child at the age of 2 or 3 does not even know any of his own parents. But if it happens that this child is coming from a particular town, the people that are from that village, we have to give them some counseling to make sure that at least this is part of them. They should accept him and take him as their own children. And we have successfully unified or reintegrated a lot of unaccompanied children with foster parents. And at the same time, they were happy to go with them. And other issues the federal government or state government have put in place is this open are being provided with facilities that will enable them to go to school. There was a understanding between the Borno State government and Kano State government where 100 orphans are being given an opportunity or a scholarship to study right from primary school up to the secondary school level, which the state government is taking full responsibility. And these children for now have been in school for the past 1.5 years. It was just last week that they were brought to Maiduguri to spend their public holiday and Ramadan holiday with their own pastor parent. And another arrangement is also being put in place that additional 100 of this kind of orphan children is going to be taken again to Kano for this kind of site. That will make the number to 200. Apart from that, His Excellency, the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, has also established a school sole in Maiduguri to give scholarship to at least 1,000 orphans. And the school has just taken up about 2 or 3 months ago in March and April. And most of the students or people in this school are those orphans that have no relation at all. And the essence of all this is to make sure that these orphans are not abandoned or are not left to become a nuisance in the society. So as much as possible, a lot of programs are being developed by state government with other agencies to make sure that most of this issue that has to do with abandoned children, those that are separated, those are accompanied, are being taken care of. And at the same time, the state government, in its own wisdom, is now developing some mega school within Maiduguri town that will accommodate the number of these children that is numbering up to 52,000 based on the statistics that was being handed by the World Bank to the state government. And this mega school, within Maiduguri town alone, there are 10 of them that will accommodate at least 50,000 people at a time. And most of these schools that are now being built have reached an advanced stage. Some of them are 90 to 95% completion. And at the same time, the modalities or the issues that were put in place see that by next session, that is around September, October, all these schools have taken up fully, so that all these children that are now in the IDP camps will now be taken into this school for a formal Western education and at the same time religious education. The number of camps that we have in Maiduguri that are hosting IDP are up to 10. And most of these IDPs are from the various local government. As some of us may be aware, at the peak of the insurgency, almost out of the 27 local governments that we have in Borno State, almost 20 to 22 of these local government were in the hands of the insurgency. And that makes almost all the people living in those local government, they flew into Maiduguri, the capital, for safety. So they have to be accommodated in this IDP camp based on their own location. But for now, since peace has gradually been restored in most of these local government areas, a lot of these IDPs are now being asked to go back to their own local government voluntarily. There is no compulsion. Anybody that is willing, and I believe some of the local government like Bama, Dikwa, Mapa, most of the indigenous have relocated back to the local government headquarters, and some lively activities are started taking place in all these areas. So these are some of the process the state government is doing. For the center finally, before I close, after we have reintegrated all these victims of insurgency, our social workers from the ministry do follow up to make sure that the trained women that are given these unaccompanied children and the adults and adults have been, as we say, have been empowered before they leave, have been monitored to see how the businesses they are doing is faring. And also these foster care parents who are providing care services for the unaccompanied and separated children are also being monitored to see that these children are well being taken care of. While there are some issues of economic problem, UNICEF sometimes do come in to assist as far, and as also the state government do assist in providing them with some livelihood support and food items so that to make sure that they don't just abandon these children because of lack of financial support from the government. So we make sure that at least some of the basic necessities are being provided so that they can be able to take care of these children adequately well without abandoning them after accepting them at the initial stage. So these are some of the issues that the rehabilitation center so far has been handling, and if need arises for some question or some clarification, then I'm ready to take some of the questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Dancoli. As you can see, all of you now, we have been presented another kind of initiative that is a little bit different in terms of the structure, in terms of the profile of the beneficiaries, with gender and age issues, and also the kind of operationalization of the rehabilitation program already in Maiduguri Rehabilitation Center. It was also interesting to hear about the efforts that are being done also directly by the Ministry of Women and Social Welfare in terms of the family tracing, in terms of the reunification aspects, and also in terms of looking for several specific opportunities for inclusion of these victims that are unfortunately have been living a long time, in many cases, in areas that are under influence of this violent extremism context. So thank you very much. And now I wanted to give the floor also to Mr. Musa Chantu, who is the Director of Orientation and Behavior Modification from National Orientation Agency, and he will also be able to explain to us specific practical issues that the National Orientation Agency is already facing and developing at the field level already in terms specifically in family tracing, awareness to the population about peace, reconciliation, reintegration, and awareness of the programs that are being done already in the field. So, Mr. Chantu, the floor is yours.
On behalf of my Director General, I want to also thank the convenience of this program and the opportunity given to us to talk to you about what our assignment is. Beginning from the fact that National Orientation Agency has been part of the Operation Safe Corridor from the beginning, in the sense that we have staff in the camp. The General has already told us much about what is expected of us. Primarily, too, the National Orientation Agency is working towards community sensitization, preparatory to the reintegration phase of the ex-combatants who have already been de-radicalized. We would have done that much earlier than now, but as you know, it's actually a process, and we are not going there on our own individually and just by a kind of a flash. You don't go into a community to engage them in a kind of a one-off thing. So we've been working towards getting to the communities, engaging them for quite some time. We're being supported at the moment by NERI to be able to go to 2 pioneer communities, which would enable us test the waters before we now know exactly how these people will be able to come back to their communities. Of course, amongst them, many of them have indicated to go back to their community of origin. So the issue of tracing does not so much arise with this set of people, because most of them are more like adults in their teens, teenage age. So they already know where they're coming from, and they know where they want to go to. They have, most of them have indicated going back to their communities, but a few have opted to go to other communities outside where they were before. and these are reasons that are personal to them too, we are not going to also go to the communities to like announce to them that, okay, government has come to tell you that these people are coming. No, it's not an imposition. We would want to dialogue with them, want to hear from them, we want to know whether actually, if they have the confidence that these people have been changed, they have been de-radicalized, would they allow them, would they accept them? If they give us that confidence, of course, we are going to work with the state government. Basically, it's a state government program that we want to work with them. We will go with them to the communities and get to prepare the grounds. I just want to quickly also mention the fact that some of these Boko Haram, repentant Boko Haram people, I mean the ex-combatants, some of them we have discovered from our interaction and other things too, that they also at a point were victims because they were forcefully recruited when their villages or towns were invaded by the Boko Haram insurgents. So a lot of them were not willingly, they were not willingly conscripted, I mean, they didn't join by their own volition. And so when they saw the window of the corridor, they surrendered because they don't want it. From the heart of the depth of their hearts, they were not there because they wanted to be there. But because they were forced to be there, any opportunity that came, they came out and said, we are not going back to that place. In fact, on the day of their graduation, I remember one of them who spoke on behalf of the others is saying that they want to send the message out there that as many of their brothers and sisters that are still in the bush, they should come out. And then again, talking to their mates and other people who are still in the society, that they should not in any way be lured to join, the sect and all of that. So we are confident that the program has been successful in the camp. And based on that, we would want to also go to the community. The entire community, everybody in the community will be part of our discussion with them. We are not going to just meet one person and discuss with him and say, okay, we have discussed. No, it's a complete community issue. Because if they come, they will be part of the community. And we are also expecting that the skills which they have gotten from the camp will be very useful for them to start up life in the community. And of course, if we believe so much, like it has been said over and over, that sometimes it's the idleness, it's the poverty and whatever that push some of them into these things. Now that they have some skills to work with, we believe that when they come in, they will settle down into their traits and skills and do some things reasonably for themselves. So as we speak, the information is that in the next 2 weeks or so, we are expected to go to the field because all preparation is set for that. We will be expecting to go to the field, Maiduguri and Goza particularly, in the next 2 weeks or so. We would have actually been there by now, but we looked at the sensitivity of the Ramadan period. So we wanted a situation there where after the Ramadan, we'll see what we can do in the field. That is what NOA is working towards, and we need the cooperation of everybody, including the state government, including our partners whom we have been partnering with. And of course, we engage a lot of resource persons who may not necessarily be our staff, because we don't have all the expertise in every area. For instance, we intend to also begin to get some clerics to give us some counter narratives, especially in the fact that we want to talk to the people against, especially those who might want to continue or admire and want to join the sect, so that they can give a clear picture of what the difference is between the true religion and what those people have actually believed and went off road and all of that. So these are part of what we are doing at the moment, and we're hoping that not in no too long distance time from now, we would be able to have the first set of people going back. Of course, sorry, not first set now. The same set, we've been told that Bauchi and Adamawa have already taken their people. So Borno and Yobe are the ones that we hope will follow very soon. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. A very interesting point also, Mr. Chantu, that you are mentioning already of this need of awareness at community level about these programs that are already ongoing, and this impact and effect that intervention of government agencies can have also at the community to strengthen also the trust, the level of trust at community level about the efficacy and the efficiency of the programs to promote reconciliation and peace values. So now Mr. Charles Bolade, he wanted to add a few words before opening debate. So the floor is yours.
Yes, please. I want to emphasize the status of these, we call them clients, the ex-combatant, because that will inform the reception of the larger society when they return. You see, we must realize, you mentioned it briefly, that they are victims. If you know the modus operandi of the Boko Haram set, then you will understand the circumstances in which those children found themselves, especially when they ravage a community and conscript those they felt would be of use, these foot soldiers, to them. So in the first instance, if we realize this, that these people were not willing Boko Haram members, but constricted, then it will inform the status, both in legal as well as the social responsibility of the society to them. It is important for us to note this, so that when we are liaising with larger society, we must be able to distinguish this. And that is the basis on which Operation Safe Corridor operates, by distinguishing the Boko Haram members itself from those who now willingly surrendered. After being profiled, we will be able to dissect who are qualified for this. It is this that grants them the right of being trained for purposes of reintegration. Mind you, everyone that were either captured or arrested in the operations do not form part of the Operation Safe Corridor program. They are dealt with under the justice system. A lot of them have been convicted and the trials are still ongoing. This must be borne in mind, especially with the realization that when these people return to the society, the stigma must be erased. Industrialists and meaningful members of the society must be willing to accept them and give them meaningful employment. It is this that we encourage others to willingly come out. Until we are ready to do this, peace will be far from being achieved. Thank you. And maybe I should also point out that before they are released from the camp, they are made to swear to an oath of allegiance, never to return to it. And that the moment they commit heinous crime, whatever amnesty that may be granted will be forfeited, and they will be tried under the justice system. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bolade, for being very clear and right to the point about specifically who should be entitled to join Operation Safe Corridor program and how the mechanisms also for prosecution and criminal justice system is also in place in parallel depending on what is the profile of these individuals who are willing to leave these violent extremist ideologies. So now I think, yes, with all these interesting presentations, we already are almost out of time, but I will kindly ask Dr. Jody if she can allow us at least 15 or 20 minutes for open discussion and interventions or questions, answers. Thank you very much. So now the floor is all yours, and our panelists here, they will be ready to answer every question, inquiry that you have. Thank you very much.
Good morning. My name is Mohammed Hassan. I'm from Herwa Community Development Initiative, operating in Maiduguri. I want to quickly go into the Safe Corridor project. We have worked in Borno State on reintegration, stigma and discrimination reduction against women and girls who have been abducted by Boko Haram and come back with children. Now, the problem that we have seen in the field, we are working in about 6 local governments in Borno State from 2016 to date. People are complaining that the repentant Boko Haram members are being treated very well by the government and by the project. They are saying that when they come back to the communities, they don't see how they can accept them, having suffered all the problems. Their people have been slaughtered, they have suffered a lot of hardships, and here now the government is training them, giving them capital, doing that and that. So they are asking, what will the government do for them? Secondly, the issue of stigma and discrimination reduction doesn't seem to have been handled by so many people. There's a project that is funded by UNICEF and International Alert that is being implemented by 3 partners in Borno State. The project is handling that, but there is a lot of stigma and discrimination issues for these women who have been abducted, particularly the children who have been born out of sexual violence. So, how are these going to be handled by the panelists? What suggestions are there for us to hear? Now, the recommendations that I want to make is that one part of the project that we are running includes training of traditional leaders. That has been mentioned. Traditional leaders are being trained to facilitate this reintegration. But the issue I have raised has to be addressed. And this has to be widespread because the access to communities that have been taken away from the insurgents, many of them are not accessible, but as people start going back there, these issues that I have raised will continue to be a problem for reintegrating the repentant Boko Haram and reintegrating girls and women who have suffered in the hands of Boko Haram. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, panelists. My name is Nnamdi Obasi. I work with the International Crisis Group. My questions are 2. First, about scale of operations, the scale of operations. The numbers we have heard, both from General Shafa and others, are in tens and hundreds. But we do know that the scale of the Boko Haram insurgency is in thousands. I think we're interested to know how you would assess the effectiveness of the programs you are conducting relative to the the scale of the challenge that we are facing. The second question I would want to ask is about how the CJTF are being carried along in these processes, because we're in constant dialogue with them. and they are remaining still very hostile to the reintegration of ex-combatants. So what is the relationship at the moment, and what are the plans about merging the gap between the two groups? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. My name is Bridget Osakwe. I work for One Up Nigeria. Thank you, panelists, for your presentation. My first concern here is about those children, unaccompanied children that have no relations, and you were trying to describe how you return them to the communities. I have difficulties in understanding how a 2-year-old child is just returned to the community like that. Maybe you have further clarification about who these children are handed over to. And the second one is that, have you been able to analyze the the percentage of the returnees? Because you have told us that some of them were conscripted or forced into Boko Haram. Okay, now do we have the numbers of the ones that were conscripted or the ones that are radicalized themselves that came back? Because we need to know if it is the radicalized that are coming back for reintegration or rehabilitation. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am Gamboga Muhammad by name from Temoko Community Development Initiative, operating in Bauchi, Borno, and Yobe states. My concern is with regard to the issue of the CJTF, that is civilian JTF. If you happen to be on your way to Maiduguri, definitely you might have seen one thing or the other, because going by the way they are operating, I think the government is supposed to look into their mode of operation, because they have been turning to receiving some money from the riders when going into Maiduguri. So this thing should be checkmate, so that to curtail further issues to arise in the near future, because this contravene the ethics of such operation. Secondly, I would like to send the question to General Shafa. What is the Army doing with regard to the personnel that have gone beyond rules of engagement, and particularly with regard to rape cases in IDP camps and some host communities? This is my question. Thank you.
Thank you. We will add a fifth question already here from your side, and after we will give already the floor for answers.
Eleanor
Thank you for
Wadinobi, Women, Peace and Security Lead, CSSF, British High Commission. My comments are with regard to the submission from the Ministry of Women's Affairs in Borno regarding vocational skills for women, and to find out from you to what extent you have looked at how empowering the vocational skills that you are providing are. The reason I'm saying this is a lot of the vocational skills around bead making, soap making are very disempowering for women. I was glad to hear that in the mix you have carpentry. To what extent do you have the women who have learnt carpentry skills participate in the schools that you are building around Maiduguri and outside of Maiduguri? In other words, linking them to the available jobs, so that whatever it is that you are training them on, you actually follow through with the value chain, and it is indeed empowering. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So now, our distinguished panelists, you can answer these questions.
Thank you very much. All the questions are thought-provoking, but I will try to do justice to them. There are some of the questions that are similar, so I will not have to answer them relative to the person who asked. The first question is about acceptance and treatment. Peace is a difficult thing, but it can be attained. And it's a responsibility of everybody. I know it's difficult to heal wounds, but wounds can definitely be healed, provided we are ready for the wound to be healed. The federal government, in realization of the conditions of the victims of Boko Haram insurgency, have put in a number of programs. The Presidential Committee for Northeast Initiative that is engaged in community development, rehabilitation of infrastructures, and then the various state governments they also have various programs to enhance return of civil authorities, return of internally displaced persons back to their communities. I'm aware in Borno, communities are being rebuilt, schools are being rebuilt. All these are in the process of ensuring that the victims are returned back to their society. The military is also conducting various operations to see that these communities are free of insurgents for the IDPs to return. It's a long process, but definitely there is light at the end of the tunnel. I'm aware that in Adamawa, virtually all the IDPs have been returned. The IDPs that are left in IDP camps in Adamawa State are non-indigens of Adamawa, I think majorly from Borno and Yobe. In Yobe State, a lot of IDPs, in fact, there's a peculiarity in Yobe. Yobe do not essentially operate IDP camps. The displaced people are integrated into the communities. And I know that with the assistance of various organizations, both local and international, they are also handling these categories of people. So, it's an elaborate program. I may not be able to tell you everything here, but I know that the government is doing a lot. And there are so many NGOs too that are doing one developmental program or the other to ensure that all victims are well taken care of at the end of the day. I will quickly go to the issue of sexual assault, infringement, vis-a-vis the rule of engagement. The Nigerian Armed Forces is a disciplined force. We do not compromise discipline. We do not compromise discipline. all cases that are reported are investigated, and personnel found culpable are disciplined. In Lafia Adole, I'm aware there are standing court martials trying personnel for one infringement or the other. On the issue of accusation of sexual assault of IDPs, I think it's still a subject that is being investigated. And I want to believe if the culprits are identified, the military will not condone them. I can assure you of that. On the issue of civilian JTF, regarding their conduct, I think I will leave that to the representative of Borno State to handle. But for what happens to them in the future, I'm aware that the federal government, in collaboration with the state governments, are developing programs for their rehabilitation at the end of the crisis. As a matter of fact, the armed forces and the police and other paramilitary have also been directed to recruit those who are qualified. Last year, I know about 250 civilian JTFs were recruited into the Nigerian Army. And I know that this year too, a number of them that are qualified would have also been recruited. The same thing with the police. So there's a program for them. I'm aware Borno State government is partnering with some NGOs to also rehabilitate the civilian JTF. Regarding the scale of Operation Safe Corridor, vis-a-vis the strength, I cannot sit down here and tell you that this is the strength of Boko Haram. What is important to me is the number of people that have surrendered and the number that have been cleared and given to Operation Safe Corridor, and the number of arrests. But Operation Safe Corridor has capacity to take as many as ex-combatants that are handed over. Don't forget our program is structured to last for a minimum of 16 weeks. So it is expected that once the state governments are ready and they are receiving their clients, the camp will be free to receive more people into the camp. Like I told you, as of today, we have 254, and in 2 weeks' time, we'll be admitting another 150. So I hope I've been able to answer these questions. Thank you.
Madam raised the question, Ms. I couldn't picture the name very well, on stigma as well as preferential treatment. I want to believe that these are perceived issues. We spoke about the status of those who are being de-radicalized and being rehabilitated. These are victims themselves, and until you have that perception, you will continue to treat them as if they are hardened Boko Haram. So if we had the opportunity of visiting the courts while they are being tried, you will notice the clear difference between the hardened one and those who are victims themselves. A lot of them comes to the court and said, there is nothing in this world that can change their mind, telling the judge that way. So you know from the start that these are hardened ones. But for the victims, they are at every moment looking for opportunity to get away. And if you know the way the Boko Haram operates, you will find out that their system is heinous. The treatment of violations of rules there cannot be compared with the normal military status. In the military, you are bound to obey lawful orders. But in their instance, you obey all orders. And if you do not, you lose your life, and they will trace your family and clear them off. So they are clear victims. So when you notice this, you'll be able to accord them the right perception. On preferential treatment, you must know that there are standards in institutions, and Nigeria cannot afford to fall below that standard. If we say we are rehabilitating, there are standards we must meet. It's like a school, a boarding school, you have to feed them, you have to keep them in a healthy situation, and this may not even be available in ordinary homes. So you don't compare the two. Where you are keeping someone, you owe the responsibility of giving them welfare and all necessary treatment required for them to be rehabilitated. Thank you.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to answer some of the few questions, especially with regard to children that were born out of insurgency, out of wedlock, their integration into the society. Honestly speaking, we have one or two issues with regard to rejection of this kind of children. But since the ministry is, has trained social workers that they are on ground to tackle these issues, we have to take it head on. Issue of community leaders being invited into this kind of cases is well known. And our imams, ulamas are also part and parcel of the reintegration process. With the social workers, NOA, National Orientation Agency, also, I think, have launched this kind of reorientation issues in some part of the state, where ulamas, community leaders are invited, and public lectures were being delivered. So with the expertise of the trained social workers, this kind of issues have been handled tactfully. At the initial stage, there may be some problem, but over a period of time, based on the advocacy, based on the preaching that is being made or are being made by the religious leaders, community leaders, all these kind of issues at the end of the day will be successfully or are successfully reintegrated and accepted into the society. So that is it. The issue of civilian JTF, as Major General has said, these are born out of necessity, as a child of necessity, and as their operation, mode of operation is being monitored by the state government and the Nigerian army as well. But in any society, whether you like it or not, you cannot overrule some bad eggs in trying to spoil whatever good you must have put on ground. So some of these issues may not be known to the state government, but because, as he said, it's being carried or out or perpetrated on the roads, that means in the villages or on highways. But I believe, based on your own presentation, I am going to at least advise the necessary authority to keep a watch so that this kind of things are prevented. Issue of unaccompanied children, whether how they are being reintegrated into the society, or where I say at the initial stage, we look for foster parents. And this had to come out of empathy or sympathy, because these children, whether we like it, belong are part and parcel of us. Anybody from Borno, including me that is sitting here, that has suffered in one way or the other from the insurgency of this Boko Haram. To tell you the least, I lost two of my younger ones also in the insurgency. And every family in Borno State has directly or indirectly suffered because of the insurgency. So such an extent, whether you like it or not, you have to accept IDPs in your house. Most of the percentage number, the higher percentage number of IDPs are not only living in the camps, are living in the host community. Because if your brother, relation, or somebody close to you has been displaced and you happen to be living in Maiduguri, there is no way you can allow him to go and stay in the IBT camp. You have to take him into your own house, whether you have space or you don't have space. So sometimes we went to the essence of even renting houses for some of our beloved ones so that at least they can stay comfortably in the host community. We know unless and until it becomes necessary that nobody would like to stay in the camps because of obvious reasons. But as circumstances warrant, definitely most of them, and that's why the government is now doing everything possible to see that all these IDP get back voluntarily into their own community, because no matter what, as the saying goes, there is no place like home. So it's just a matter of time, and the state government is on top of the situation, doing everything possible to see that these IDP committees upon committees are being formed at the state level, whether from SEMA, that is State Emergency Agency, or at various levels that His Excellency has directed stakeholders in various local government to come together to see to the best way how these communities will get back and stay safely in the good example of this case is now the Rotoni of Bama, which is one of the second largest town in Borno State, that now almost 50% of its population are getting back and life is coming back to normal. But you see, one basic problem is that all the infrastructures that has to provide for good living are not there, whether it's electricity, water, and roads, housing. All these things are taking off simultaneously: building of houses, provision of water, provision of basic things that are required. And upon all, people, 80 to 90% of the population of Borno State are agrarian in nature. And for the past 6 to 7 years, nobody has gone to the farm. And even as now that we are talking about, the towns may be safe, but maybe just a kilometer or two outside the villages may not be safe enough for these farmers to go and do what they know best, that is farming or rearing of animals. So if and only if the bushes or outside the towns are no longer safe, even if these people come back to their villages or local government areas, there is no way they can sustain a living without their normal profit, because they don't know anything apart from farming. So that's what is making the returnees very, very difficult, because even if we take them back to their villages, you have to provide them with food, with almost everything that they require for them to live. So you see how enormous and taxing the operation is all about. Issue this, even though it does not refer to me directly, but I just want to make an issue with regard to these rape cases, where I believe a committee was even set up by His Excellency the Vice President to investigate and on this issue of rape cases in IDP camp. And the part of the report was on my table some time back, and that's why I want to make an issue about this. All these kind of issues are allegations. All these committees have done their voice, and there was no single issue why army or any security personnel was being found. But sometimes there are bad elements that try to instigate issues that may like to create problems. And even after that, some of the recommendations put by the committee was also asked to see how best they were implemented. And it was in that regard that the report was sent to my table, and some of the committee from the federal level were in my office. We discussed on the best way to implement some of the recommendations. So most of these issues are sometimes being allegations, and the Major General has also said so. The Army do not take this kind of issues lightly. Whenever there are issues like this, they address it squarely and deal with the officer concerned at the appropriate time and as the way and manner the Nigerian Army is being set up. Then lastly, somebody talked about the women we train in terms of skill acquisition, like some making, beast making, whether how sustainable are they and to what extent they are able to maintain their livelihood. To be candid, these are some of the basic and simple skills that the ministry or our other developing partners can be able to impact on these women and children that can be sustained or adapted within the shortest period of their stay in the rehabilitation center. As I told you, the staying in rehabilitation center is not indefinite. It has a specific period, minimum of 8 weeks and maximum of 12 weeks. And apart from that, one other skill I forgot to mention is tailoring. And most of these women, especially tailoring, is very, very viable. Like for the soap making, they get the skill, but as you say, marketing, some of their products sometimes come a problem. But we do advise government also to at least make them, let them organize themselves into cooperative society where bulk purchase by government should also be made, so that to make sure that at least whatever products they produce at least can be purchased at where government can buy it in bulk and now give it or assist, give it as assistance to some of these IDPs that are in the camp. But as much as possible, some of them are trying their best to see that between their own business skills, they do market their own product to see that actually these things are, the skills they acquire do sustain them in one form or the other. Lastly, I forgot to mention about these unaccompanied children. A lot of things are happening. Even, I think it was this week on Monday, one Major General from 7 Deep wrote a letter officially seeking for adoption of a 15-year-old girl. So if you look at it, there are some issues that sometimes that are just so natural. Those that we cannot trace or cannot get a foster parent, in Maiduguri we have what is called orphanage home, Fatima Alif Children's Home. This orphanage home is being catered and taken care 100% by state government. Abundant children, where you find cases of social biases, where a day old or 2 day old are being sometimes being dropped on the street, so are being picked by the police or reported to the social worker, will be brought to the kind and home and being taken care of. Once they grow and we seek for adoption from willing people, parents, and most of this kind of issues are being treated at that level as well. So some of these unaccompanied children, due to advocacy, as I said earlier, or sympathy or empathy, are being adopted by willing parents, so that they adopt them as their own children. And a lot of advocacy also is going in that direction. But so far, most of those that have adopted this foster parent, when we say unaccompanied, some of the parents that are adopting them may know the parents of the unaccompanied children in one way or the other, because they are coming from the same society. Maybe they are being killed, or maybe they know that it's from the same village. They may say, okay, even despite the fact that I don't know the parents, but we are from the same area, let me take care of him, because we don't know what God may make him in the future. And these are some of kind things based on our own religious background that make it much, much easier for us at least to make sure that all these unaccompanied children get into the society without much headache. And that's why the minister also take time to make follow-up to see that, okay, all this kind of adoption, okay, how did it go? Or is there any problem? And why need be little assistance within the capacity of the state government, or UNICEF in particular, do assist, especially if it comes to issues like medical, for the children that are needing medical attention. Some amount of stipend is being given them, or they are being referred to medical centers where all their bills are being taken care of. Thank you. I think I hope I'm able to answer most of the questions that were raised. Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, I just want to add my voice on one or two of the questions that were put, but particularly the issue of acceptance. Yes, just like we say, to accept somebody, it must be willing. You are not forced to accept anything. Even if it is a gift, somebody give you, you willingly accept the gift. You are not forced to accept. Not to talk about it, something like looks like a problem coming to you. Nobody is assuming that it's going to be a very difficult, simple task for us in the communities to convince them to accept these people. But it is not impossible. There is this saying, to err is human, but to forgive is divine. And the religions that I know around, teach forgiveness. And if that is it, and we go from that end, yes, this person has done this for you, or to any other person at all, and you are so angry that you just don't want to see him again. Let me just give this example. Some of us have lost very, very loved ones, brother, sister, whatever, parents and the rest, to natural death. Now, let me give an example. If they say somebody you know you lost a few weeks ago, he died, you know he was buried, and somehow, I don't know what happens, then you see him, what's your reaction? Do you understand what I'm saying? Yes, it's somebody you really felt the losing of that person. But the moment you see him again, you begin to run. Ghost. Isn't it? So, the same way, somebody you had wished, he has gone. You know, because he killed my brother, he did this, why should he? You know, if you see him, there's that natural feeling that, this bad person, this bad omen is coming back and all of that. But you see, the point is that God has made us in such a way that he gives us a memory. He also makes us to forget a few things that may not be very good for us. So in the situation where such is the case, we will appeal to people. The messages we are going with have to do with reconciliation, forgiveness, in the interest of peace, in the interest of progress, and all of that. Like I said, if, for instance, a community particularly, let's say, they say, this one, we don't want to see him. Nobody is going to force that person to go back to that community. Definitely there will be a way of relocating that person perhaps to another place, if it must be by the consent of the community. So I think that some of these things they are difficult, but they are also doable.
Thank you very much. We will open a last round of questions. Okay, I'm seeing already 3 hands already raising, 4. Okay, and 5.
Thank you very much for this very rich discussion. I wanted to seek a clarification from our representative from Borno State regarding the boarding schools for children. What I think we were hearing was large sort of an institutional approach for large numbers of children in single facilities. And so in this context, I'm wondering what kind of consultation has been made with best practices around the world in terms of handling large, in terms of handling that cohort of children in a way that is sensitive to their needs.
Thank you very much. My name is Ken Dashiell. I work with the International Institute of Tropical Agriculture. Just a minute ago, the Permanent Secretary was stating that 80 to 90% of the people in his state, Borno State, are agrarian. They depend on agriculture for their living. As we think about the returning combatants, probably most of them also come from parents or farmers. And we would expect that when they go back to their they don't want to go back and be farmers like they were before. They want to go back and be highly productive farmers using modern technologies so that farming becomes more than family. It becomes a business where they have a very productive in the last 4 years, the place I work for, IITA, we've been working in Borno State with youth in Borno State, and we have over 200 youth that are now highly productive in agriculture, different parts of the value chain. And my point is, I have so much confidence in the youth to be highly productive in agriculture once they can have the skills and the knowledge and the resources to get started in agriculture. And wouldn't it be fantastic if a returning to a village where he grew up. And because he comes back to that village, that whole village gets the benefit of improved agriculture technology. I think it would be a great psychological boost for the whole village to welcome somebody.
Yes, I'm Hamsatu Alemin from my degree. My question is to the General on Operation Safe Corridor. Safe Corridor has come a long way. In fact, it has graduated its first set of trainees, still keeping them because governments could not take them back to their communities. Now, with all sincerity, sir, are we still convinced with the conviction that the military is the right institution to lead and manage this safe corridor of an initiative, particularly in de-radicalizing these ex-combatants, while at the same time leading in the counter-insurgency operations as the #1 enemy of the Boko Haram? So here the challenge is the issue of trust. And then secondly now, yes, my permanent secretary, my junior brother, has told us, in fact, there was a time I approached him whether I can get some Boko Haram members within that camp that they manage. And sincerely, he told me, Hajia, we don't have them. In fact, all are suspects, and then they have been cleared. What we do is what he said now, and then we have taken them back to their communities. So I now went back to my community and then to the IDP camps. And believe you me, when I stayed, I went around for 1 week. I became sick for almost 3 weeks because the kind of information and then what I discovered, even within the IDP camps, are children from the age of 9 to 16 who have gone through the military detention barrack and now transferred to the camp and then now sent back to the host communities, which is the host communities, of course, is the IDP camp there. Believe you me, these children confessed, yes, they are really active Boko Haram members. Children who will tell us that, yes, they can couple and uncouple the guns. They can even, in fact, make the bombs themselves. Even women, a woman who has stayed in the barrack for over 6 months, gone through the rehabilitation, she's telling me, Mama, don't look at me as a small person. I command more than 300 women in the Sambisa forest. And they are now all living back living with us. And funny enough, you know, the whole community is saying we are not going to accept Boko Haram members. The product of safe corridor should not be returned back to us. But honestly, we have these high-risk people already living saturated the community. So the task is enormous. We have to re-strategize and then sincerely impact. So even the women whom we interviewed, the kind of things they were telling, in fact, all of them, their minds and hearts are still back with this forest. They are only there here, they said, because some of them lost their first husband, and then in their own tradition, when you lose your first husband, you are allowed to marry again. But when you lose the second husband, then you have to be forced to undertake a jihad. And what is it? To become a suicide bomber. So, and that is the only thing that will make them to come back to us. So their hearts are still back with the forest people. So please, honestly, we have to go back to the drawing board and then think of what kind of strategy will work best in the interest of peace if we want really peace to reign.
Yeah. Thank you very much. My name is Baba Mushemilawan. I'm a fellow of the Northeast Social Innovation Fellowship sponsored by NERI. I'm a fellow from Borno State. My question goes to the Commander Operation Safe Corridor. one of our key areas of campaign has to do with rehabilitation and reintegration of ex-combatant. You made mention that for a particular combatant to go across, to transit to the safe corridor, he has to go through the Operation Lafia Dole, and there are some criteria that he has to pass through. I think me and my colleagues will be interested for you to give us those criteria he has to go through. And she has already answered one of the questions, and I want you to put more lights on this issue of discrimination, issue of acceptance. There are people that we have seen, young people that have been saying they won't accept ex-combatant. For you to accept someone that has killed your brother, your sibling, or someone, what message do you have for the youths? What message do you have for the youths to accept this ex-combatant and for them to contribute meaningfully in the development of their various communities? Thank you.
Good morning. I am Brigadier General Saleh Bala, retired. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of a private consultancy. I do defense and security concept development. And my contribution is this, that it is very, very important to understand context, especially for those direct radicalized that you are rehabilitating and resettling. You don't want to generate a core of elites in those societies you are returning. I'll give you a clear example. From the days of the abolition of slavery, a core of elite ex-slaves were returned to Sierra Leone, and that became history. We are warming up now that the US is returning a core of asylum seekers from the US. People who otherwise were sustaining their families in Liberia, they are going to be returned en masse from the US to Liberia. And these are exclusive people who by earning, by education, are coming back into their societies fully higher than their local communities. I speak to this in the context of an advice that was given, or a complaint, that those who are returned into the society are being bred and given a level and a scale of status that is otherwise higher than those in the communities they are being resettled. It is very dangerous. I have had two speakers speak about international standards. There is a phrase which I read very, very important in this, which refers to context, that solutions will be locally emphasized, but only applied from an international perspective where necessary. I am only paraphrasing. We are a developing nation. Those so-called international best practices are best practices that are researched into and established by elites who sit in air-conditioned rooms here and assume these are the standards that are applicable in the field. We must be very cautious. I am glad we are speaking about the nexus. So when you resettle, you should be very, very careful. You should be very, very deliberate in ensuring that you don't bring in people whose class of and standard of living will be much higher than the locality in which they are going to be kept, because they will be negated. You will have rising against the settlers. And I hope you understand that even in our urban areas, where otherwise visitors are the leaders, are the empowered, rich people in commerce and industry. And all over Nigeria now, in the urban areas, we are having a problem of otherwise non-indigens feeling exploited by otherwise people who have come in to settle. I hope I have spoken to it. We have to localize and whatever best practices or international standards there are. Those of us who went on UN peacekeeping, United Nations peacekeeping, the standard for the AU is different. And it is because we had to adapt to African solutions. So we must understand that. Let us not generate a core of elites that further will compound otherwise the problem we have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, there is a last question here. This table, please.
Thank you very much. It is fantastic listening to practitioners in the field. I just want to ask a very simple question. Pamseg, you sit in your office, you see this day in, day out. You discuss with these partners day in, day out. Are you convinced that this thing will finish? And when?
After this good last question, I will give the responsibility to the discussants really to face this challenge. Thank you.
I think it's important to put that question into context because that question was made by the Secretary to the Government, SSG for Adamawa State. So we have to put the question in context before we answer it.
Thank you very much, my friend, my brother, the SSG of Yobe State, who happened to be Adamawa, who has happened to be a colleague from the day we are in the university up to our master's level when we are in UK, when he was doing his PhD, and has been a very good mentor to me as well. Being the last question and being so interesting, I would like to start with it. Honestly speaking, issue of insurgency is a very complicated issue. For those of us that see the beginning of Boko Haram to today, we know how it all started. I have never left Maiduguri for a single day because of fear of Boko Haram from 2009 when it started to date. So we know how it's all going on and the implication that goes with it. Candidly, if we have to say what is on our mind, but I have to restrict it to my own personal opinion because I cannot speak on behalf of the government or any other agency. It's our prayer that this thing should come to an end. But whether it will finish or it will not finish, only God knows. But the way and manner this thing should be handled is if we want it to end as soon as possible, then Shako, Mamanur, or whoever is the commander should be captured, killed, or whatever. Once the leader is alive, honestly speaking, whether we like it or not, the fight is still on, and the essence it will continue when we leave it to God to decide. So that is it. Then other issues that are being asked about this Boko Haram, whether those that have been rehabilitated, reintegrated, or unified into the society, a lot of them are members of Boko Haram. I too, as an operator of a rehabilitation center, I once had to ask one of the defense intelligence in Giwa Barak, Maiduguri, what about if somebody was found out to be a member of Boko Haram, having been cleared and then brought to the center by the Nigerian army? Because once somebody is being cleared and handed over to the state government, us as a ministry or as a government civilian, we cannot say this person is a Boko Haram member. So we have to treat him as well, unless and until it proves otherwise. So that raises the question that I have to ask the defense intelligence, what about if that person found out to be a Boko Haram? He said, okay, his initial clearance is not a guarantee that he cannot be arrested again. Once and if he is being found to be guilty of any other offense, he can be rearrested and retried in court of law if he is a partisan. So I believe that just give the answer. Secondly, about this civilian JTF, the issue, how it even emerges and then become a force to reckon with is because most of the civilian JTF are used in the same peer group with the Boko Haram members. So they know themselves, they know those that have participated, they know the essence of their participation, they know the atrocities that, and believe me, even the Grand Commander is from the same word that I'm coming from in Maiduguri. So it was in good relationship or rapport that happened between these young boys that are innocent with the Nigerian army that this civilian JTF was given birth to. So they were discussing with the army that were stationed in each of the wards between Maiduguri town, okay, that we cannot differentiate those people or the Boko Haram boys that were killing people in Maiduguri in broad daylight and those innocent boys that are not doing this kind of issue. So it was on this agreement that some of these boys volunteer to take the number of this army and say whenever these boys come to commit the atrocity, we are going to call you upon so that you can come in civilian dresses with your gun hidden so that you can arrest. And it was one day in the afternoon while I was standing in front of my house that this thing happened. And the army come and killed the boy that was trying to kill some people in broad daylight in Babalai. And then from there, these boys were arrested, and then this civilian JTF emerges. And then they start to cooperate with the Nigerian army, showing them these boys, and from there, everything started to go on well, and relationship developed up to this extent. So I believe the emergence of civilian JTF become a necessity, and at the same time, they become assistant to the Nigerian army. But the rule of engagement has been reviewed from time to time by the army and by the Borno state government. So somebody talked about when I say the population of people living in Borno State, 80 to 90% are agrarian. He's talking about modern mechanized agriculture. Yes, we can only develop if we adopt the mechanized agriculture in the totality. Why? Because this is the only way out. But by nature, our farmers are subsistent in nature. They barely produce what they eat for a period of 1 year or so. But at government level, because this is not a forum for that, that's why I did not mention it, but since the question is there, my state government, I know, has did a lot in trying to mechanize agriculture. But mechanization has so many meanings to those of us that by our profession are also agricultural by training. So buying tractors, other equipments like harrows, planters, diggers, ridgers, to me as a professional, is not mechanization as people may term it. Real mechanization has to do a lot more than that. And I feel if need be, the SSG to Adamawa State government may shed more light in that, because I believe he's an expert as well. So, but some state governments, especially Borno State, even as now I'm talking about, has more than 1,000 brand new tractors on ground with a lot of other farm implements. 25 combined harvesters that were bought about 2 or 3 years ago when I happened to be the general manager of the State Mechanization Authority. But because of the insurgency, these machineries and implements are yet to be put into use. So they are still lying wasted or idle due to the insurgency. So you can see to the extent what insurgency has done to our people. But I hope once it's over, if Shako is captured or killed, as I said earlier, maybe the field will be free enough for us to go and utilize this so that everybody could partake. Lastly, about the mega school he talked about, I think government is built this way with a sense of belonging, because with the number of orphanages on ground, the government in some wisdom decided to build this school so that it will accommodate all these orphans and children that have no parents, to provide them with Western and Islamic education. And at the state level, some schools that are already in existence, especially those Fulani that we call them Bororo, that are one category of Fulani people that are always in the bush. They hardly come to town. His Excellency had even gone to the Eastern because they have lost almost all sorts of their livelihood, have taken their own children to a special school, one of the most valuable school in Maiduguri, to get formal education, Western and religious education. And all these kinds of programs are coming up bit by bit, and the schools that I say are being built over a period of time are being meant to take care of all these children, which, if not being done, may be allowed to be wasting their time, or may, at the end of the day, if care not taken, will be recruited as insurgents again. So that is why the government decided to build all these schools, to take care of them. Thank you. I hope I have answered almost all the questions.
Thank you so much, sir. Sir, I would like to begin with the last question and to say that we can only have what we intend to have. I believe that there could be and there will be an end to this insurgency. Nigeria went through a civil war, but today we are trying to foster the peace. Liberia had the same thing, but today peace is returning. If we are sincere and really want to end this, we can end it. There is hardly any state within the Northeast that people who matters do not know one or two of these insurgents. If we begin right from family roots to begin to speak peace and love and unity, then we are on the road to having unity permanently entrenched in the society. Whatever has a beginning must have an end. Let us first start to put an end together to this. I will want to disabuse the mind that we are creating a kind of class with the radicalization process. I will engage everyone who has the opportunity to visit the Gombe camp. You see, it is not a fantastic place as we are all seated here. It is not. But there are standards that must be met ordinarily. You don't expect that defecation will be everywhere. There must be toilets. You don't expect that they will be sleeping in open space. There must be a habitable place with minimum mattresses and all that. And these are being provided by our partners. Basically, we are using NYSC camp. And you know how NYSC camps are all over the Federation. We are trying as much as possible to make it even habitable. So it's not a class creation, but we try to give meaningful living to those who are there. And briefly, I would want to say that in a chaos situation where there are unruly behavior, you don't expect an ordinary civilian to command. Command must come from authority that has the capacity. And if all of us go by whatever we have learned today, we will see that there are experts in various aspects. It is not the military that is doing the radicalization, we said that. But we must provide the enabling environment to do that. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I want to touch just on the last point he was saying. I don't know where we actually, even in this room, are getting this idea of creating a class from these people. I'm not too sure if that is the picture. Apart from what he has just said and the condition of the camp, what is it that they have learned? Is it the national anthem that we taught them to sing? Is it the few traits that we are asking them to start? Because they just started. It's not enough time to qualify. The general has told us that if they go back to their communities, we expect that they will be linked with NDE training centers to continue and perfect those things. Most traits in this country, if you want to really learn and be a master in it, it takes a lot less than a year. And so I don't see how somebody would have learned any trade to begin with and say, and then what are they giving there? Is it salary or what is it? They have not been educated more than they went into that place, because primarily there is no education in that place except just information and other things. These are people that, of course, they came back from the bush. They are being kept in a camp. And we are asking that since they have been changed, de-radicalized, their thinking, their mentality has been altered, they could go back to their communities and continue from where they stopped. That's what we're saying. So I don't know how they will take over. Of course, I know and I understand the stance of those who have been in the community. Perhaps if these people come back, is it maybe because of the skills they have learned or whatever? Because they are not coming back with cars and houses and whatever. They're not coming back with anything government has given them to make them more powerful than the others. But I sympathize and I want to believe that too. The state governments will do everything possible to also ensure that where these communities are being repopulated, people are going back to those communities from the IDP camps and wherever. They will also set up certain things or put in place some structures and things that will also help the youth generally in those communities to also be empowered. So if that is done by the state governments and other organizations, I believe that there would not be any parity between these people and the ones coming.
Thank you very much. I will talk specifically on the questions from Ajia as to whether the Nigerian military is qualified to de-radicalize. We need to get this thing in correct context and perspective. If I get you right, you are probably looking at what we are doing from United Nations, demobilization, disarmament, stuff. There's a security problem in Nigeria, which the government and its apparatus are dealing with. There's no warring factions in Nigeria, that Nigerian military is a warring faction, Boko Haram is a warring faction. No. There is a security challenge in Nigeria, and the government is using its apparatus to deal with it. And when we look at it from that perspective, every agency of the government, including the armed forces, will have to do and implement the strategic directive of the commander-in-chief. And that is exactly what we are doing. In the course of my presentation, I did mention that the armed forces of Nigeria is only providing enabling environment for Operation Safe Corridor to take place. Other agencies of the government, being led by the Nigerian prisons, is the one that is handling the de-radicalization. And we also have partners, local and international partners, that are assisting us to achieve this. So we need to get this thing in the right perspective. Please. On the issue of whether this thing will end, I'm standing here, I'm a Major General in the Army. I knew how this thing started, and I know where we are now. And I have that strong conviction that with the effort of the commander-in-chief, we will bring Boko Haram to an end. As a young officer, I was in Liberia. We brought peace to Liberia. As a middle cadre officer, I was in Sierra Leone. We brought peace to Sierra Leone. Now I'm a general officer. By the grace of God, who will bring peace to Nigeria. Thank you, and God bless.
Okay, so really, I think we exceeded already in 45 minutes the schedule of our panel.
Can we have silence, please, in the back? Thank you very much.
I'm very delighted to see that it was a very exciting and we could discuss about this issue the whole day, but we have an agenda that is going on. So we understood already what is the role, or start to understand what is the role of peace and security in this nexus and in the overall discussion. And we can see now how, with good criteria, Dr. Jody chose also to write and to highlight the word peace in capitals in this panel. So really, I would like to thank a lot the panelists really for being so detailed in their explanation of the government efforts to de-escalate and to promote the peaceful manners, also to return and reintegrate victims and former Boko Haram associates back to the community, and for being also so open, didactic, and dynamic in the answers to the relevant questions that were already raised here. I would like really to ask for all of you for a big and loud clap for our panelists. Dr. Jody.
Thank you very much. As the panelists gather for a photo and leave the stage, thank you very much. I want to thank every one of you. But I particularly want to give my thanks to the Chief of Defense Staff for giving his permission for the Army and for the military to be present here today in the person of Major General Bamidele Shafa. Also for him sending his representative, Commodore Pinda, to be with us not just today but through the entire event. It shows the importance that our government places on this conversation. It shows the importance that we realize that peace and security are the primary responsibilities of a government. And we cannot be here talking about humanitarian development, peace nexus, without having those who have that primary responsibility in the room. The conversation would have been incomplete without you. So we're very, very grateful. This right here today is the nexus. What we're seeing today, as you just said, Fernando, peace nexus. It was highlighted for a reason, because without peace, we can't have any of it. And I agree with you, we could be here forever having this conversation, but the conversation has just started and it will continue. We're forming relationships, we're forming bonds, we're forming linkages, which is what a nexus is. And you know, today there are many in the room who I'm sure will want to get the attention of the panelists, the permanent secretary, and hear all about those children. I have questions about my Aisha, who was released from Sambisa that April. I was there in Maiduguri and she went back. I have questions, so many questions. My little baby that was named after me that is in that center. I have very many questions. So I'm going to let you all break right now. But I have a couple of other things. We have to look at what has been done before. We said this yesterday. In Rwanda, about 1 million people were killed in the space of 30 days. 1 million people. If you go to some of those sites, it's literally eerie. I went to Lake Kivu about 10 years ago, and I didn't know why, but I couldn't sleep for 3 days until somebody told me that a majority of the bodies had been dumped in that lake. You can feel it in the air, but yet today they have peace. They have peace. So there are lessons to be learned from various parts of the world. There are things we can learn, and we mustn't shut our minds to peace. As the gentleman, the director from the NOA said, that it is human to err, but to forgive is divine. And we can't, it's difficult to say that. I say to people all the time that forgiveness is a choice. You have to fake it till you make it. You know, so you wake up every day and you say, I forgive you, I forgive you, I forgive you, until one day, somehow that reality penetrates the heart. Thank you very much. We're going to take a 5-minute break whilst the panelists take photographs, and we're coming right back for another really exciting session where somebody said we need to involve community leaders, CJTF, traditional rulers in this conversation. Well, they're right here. From as far away as Madagali, from I think Dikwa area in Borno State, from Maiduguri, we have the community here and we're going to hear from them next. Thank you.